Let's get some clarity on this with Michael F. Florio starts and sits. The full list available at NFL.com/start and sit. It is a question plaguing the nation, Mike. Which Bronco do we start on Sunday?
Which one was it that scored the fantasy points every single week?
It was J.K. Dobbins.
That is who you start, right? As much as we all wanted in the fantasy space RJ Harvey to be a thing, this is undoubtedly J.K. Dobbins' backfield. He leads this backfield in snaps, carries, and goal line carries. And what I don't think is getting enough attention, he leads the entire NFL in explosive runs right now. He is getting the job done. He brings such a safe floor, either 100 rushing yards or a touchdown in every game. But this could be an upside game. Jets, 7th most yards allowed to running backs, and they give up a ton of points. Game script should be on his side. But I do think RJ Harvey is a sleeper in this one because it could be a blowout like week 4 was, and we saw the Broncos try to highlight their younger players in that game.
All right, so a little positivity for the backfield there. Let's go on the negative side. Who's a sit this week?
Y'all are going to hate me for this one. I'm going big on the sits this week.
Whoa.
Derrick Henry. And let me explain. This is only if Lamar Jackson is out once again this week. But last week was one of the fewest amount of light boxes Derrick Henry has seen as a Raven. It led to his 3rd fewest yards before contact and 2nd worst yards per carry. It's also because their O-line is very banged up right now. But then he gets the Rams this week, who've allowed the 5th fewest yards before contact and have yet to allow a rushing touchdown to running back. Plus, when the Ravens fall behind, it is Justice Hill that we see a lot of in passing down in catch-up mode. And falling behind seems pretty likely against the Rams this week. So not a must-sit, but if you have another option that you've been kind of wanting to get in your lineup, this could be a week to flip it and get the king on the bench. And then look, I said I'm going big. Alvin Kamara. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a sit. 9 fantasy points per game the last 3 weeks for the Saints running back. He has not been a top 25 fantasy running back in any of those weeks. If you look at his metrics, a lot of them are below league average right now. And we are starting to see more Kendre Miller in the running game. The targets haven't been consistent there for him in that Saints passing attack with Spencer Rattler. And then lastly, the Patriots, they are really tough against the run this year. Only the Browns allow fewer yards per carry, and they just shut down James Cook, who is one of the best running backs in football.
So not too long ago, those guys 1 and 2 in running backs in terms of fantasy. So, yeah, he's going big for the sits this week at the running back position. Let's go over to the starts for wide receiver. Who's getting in our lineup?
I will take an L on Stefon Diggs. Look, I was foolish enough to doubt a 31-year-old wide receiver coming off of a major knee surgery, coming off of a down season as well. And then Stefon Diggs reminded me that he is not human. Like, the way that he is moving, the way he is getting open downfield, this reminds me of prime Bill Stefon Diggs, not the guy that we've seen the last couple of years. But not only is he back, he's back to being an elite wide receiver 1. In the last 2 weeks, he leads the NFL in target and air yard share. His air yards per target right now would be his best since 2022. So the big plays are back there. He's getting a ton of volume. All we need now is for him to get a touchdown or 2, and he could perform once again like a top 10 wide receiver. And then, Patrick, you were talking up Tetairoa McMillan earlier. I agree with you 100%. He is guaranteed volume, at least 8 targets every game. He's been the first read on 28% of passes per fantasy points data. And then Cowboys, right? They allow the most yards and touchdowns to wide receivers, specifically to the most to outside wide receivers, specifically to the most on deep ball passes to wide receivers. All of that is really good things for McMillan, who plays out wide, who is their deep threat. And they might be in catch-up mode in this one. I'll call it now. McMillan's best fantasy game as a pro so far is going to happen this Sunday.
All right, and perhaps that includes him finally getting in the end zone, considering the volume of targets he's gotten in that offense. But who's getting not in the end zone on our bench this week?
T. Higgins. Look, Joe Flacco, that's who you think is going to save this season. Have you not been watching Joe Flacco these recent years outside of that 6-game stretch, which somehow stole him comeback player of the year from DeMar Hamlin? He has not been good for years. And T. Higgins, he has been struggling. 33 yards per game through 5 weeks. That includes the game and a half that he played with Joe Burrow. His catch rate right now would be bottom 5 in the NFL. And you could say, oh, well, there's a new quarterback there. Yeah, well, his first game is against the Packers, who are extremely tough. They get after the quarterback. Flacco is just starting to learn this offense. I would roll the dice on Jamar Chase because we've seen what he could do, but T. Higgins, I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach.
Let's get back to Michael F. Florio's starts and sits. We get the quarterbacks and the tight ends this week. Well, not just this week, this part of the show, because we did one part, now we do the other part. As we get into these, I noticed, Mike, that there's some quarterbacks who have slowly started to move up your start and sit rank.
Well, if you remember back to last season, I was coming on this show every chance I got and being like, in Dynasty, go out and get Drake May. Like, this kid is going to be a star. I've had him as a start every week so far this season. I'm so happy that in his worst fantasy game of the year, the rest of the world is finally being like, this Drake May kid, he can play. Yeah, he can. He is awesome. And we have seen that he has a safe floor in fantasy, but he also has a very high ceiling because he adds value with his legs. Like, that playmaker gene I talk about a lot. You guys all saw that play where he had a defender on him and still got the ball out to Diggs. Like, that is the special kind of stuff that you just cannot teach. And for the first time in his career in the NFL, he has a true number one wide receiver. And what I really love is this week, he gets the Saints, who have generated pressure at the second lowest rate in the NFL. May is top 5 in EPA from a clean pocket. You give him time, he will pick apart this Saints secondary.
All right, let's go over to the sit side of the quarterback spot. And I'm looking at this name, Mike, a perennial starter. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't think anyone has hyped up Justin Fields since March than me. Like, I have enamored with him, and you see why. Only him, Lamar, and Mahomes have 3 25-plus point fantasy games at the quarterback position. But why is he a sit this week? Because of the matchup. And I don't think it's really even on Justin Fields. His offensive line is atrocious. They give up pressure at the highest rate in the NFL. It is 50% of the time he is under pressure. Every other team is 40% or less. And on the other side is that Broncos secondary, who generate pressure at the second highest rate. Plus, Pat Surtain is there and could take Garrett Wilson out of the game at times. He has done a lot of his damage in catch-up mode, but this doesn't feel like a defense that'll soften up late in the game. So not a must sit, but like for me, I'm sitting him in a couple places for Dak Prescott, but I get it if you just want to roll the dice because of the upside we have seen. And then last week I told you to start Jackson Dart. I keep saying he brings more upside than anyone on waivers at the quarterback position, and I still believe in that because of what he does with his legs. I think it is possible come the end of the year he is a fantasy QB1. But we saw last week that there's going to be some growing pains with him, and the Eagles secondary is extremely tough this season. So this is a very tough defense on a short week for a veteran quarterback, let alone a rookie in his third start. So there'll be plenty more weeks to start these guys. Jersey, don't come for me, but I just think with the matchups this week, it's a week you could get away.
Yeah, and I think if anybody's accusing Mike of copy and pasting week in and week out, these guys were both starts last week. He has made the adjustment considering the matchups and the performances. Let's go to the tight end spots. Who are we getting in our lineup?
I know I said to sit as quarterback, but I think you could start Mason Taylor this week. He was a big ad off the waiver wire, and now I think he is someone that you could just plug and play. Team high, 12 targets last week, 19 in his last 2 games. And I was talking about how the Jets are in catch-up mode a lot. Not only is Mason Taylor the number 2 target now, but when they are in catch-up mode, it was just repeatedly short underneath targets like this one, boom, right? Just rinse and repeat Mason Taylor time and time again because the defense is worried about Garrett Wilson downfield, so they leave him open, short and underneath. It's why all of his highlights are stuff short and underneath. But I don't think he is the only tight end that you could start in this game. I think on the other side, Evan Ingram is in play, who has been a top 2 target for Bo Nix each of the last 2 weeks. We saw him find the end zone last week, but he has not yet had a big yardage game. That could come this week because the Jets, they have really struggled against players lined up in the slot this season, and Evan Ingram actually has led, when he's played, leads the Broncos in yards from the slot. The Jets also have struggled against tight ends, and they've given up at least 27 points in each game, so there's also just scoring opportunity there for the Broncos against the Jets.
It felt like that go-ahead touchdown against the Eagles was the start of something for Evan.
Let's hope.
As the fantasy projections haven't matched the way that things have gone this season for Evan Ingram. Let's go to our sit at the tight end spot. Who's going down?
The first 3 weeks were fun, but Juwan Johnson, he was not putting up huge yardage, and he doesn't score touchdowns at a high rate, so it was really volume-dependent catches. But the last 2 weeks, the targets, they have dried up. In fact, Rashid Shaheed and Alvin Kamara have more targets than him in the last 2 weeks. It is why in that span, he has averaged less than 5 fantasy points per game. Now you got to worry about Taysom Hill being back and potentially stealing some routes at tight end. And he just has 1 touchdown in the last 9 games. So him losing those targets and those catches is greatly diminishing his fantasy value. I know some people are still buying in on the Saints offense right now, but I am not one of them.
It's me.
Oh, is it?
I'm people.
Laquan Jones on our pod loves the Saints as well.
We'll see how things go this particular week because that's a fun matchup. It's time for higher or lower here on NFL Fantasy Live because you get projections over on the NFL.com page for your fantasy scores. We're going to tell you whether or not the actual number will be higher or lower than the projection you get. And we'll start with Jaden Daniels going up against the Bears week 6. Mike, higher or lower than 20.2?
If you wanted it to be lower, you asked the wrong one of the two of us. I love Jaden Daniels. I'm going to go with higher here. I think Jaden is back. Last week was kind of a ramp-up game. I know the knee slowed him down a little bit, but Jaden has averaged over 40 rushing yards per game. And no team has allowed more yards per carry to quarterbacks than the Bears. They have really struggled against the run in general this season. They've also given up the 8th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And we know these quarterbacks are going to be tied at the hip for their whole career. It's the reason why it's the Monday night game. It's the reason why we're all so excited for it. I think that adds a little incentive to be like, hey, you went out and you picked the wrong guy.
Oh, there it is. The ultimate idea with both of these guys. Only one of them can be good. It's against the rules for both of them to actually be very good quarterbacks. Also involved in that transaction, Bryce Young with the trade. So higher or lower than 17.3 fantasy points, right, for week 6?
I'm gonna go a little bit higher for Bryce Young in this instance. I know it's always a dangerous game. I've got caught streaming Bryce Young a couple of times, and it hasn't always worked out for me, but even though the math says that you should do it, obviously last week Bryce Young had 2 touchdowns in week 5, the most since week 2, but the Dallas Cowboys have allowed the 2nd most touchdown passes this season with 12. They've allowed the most fantasy points per game to the position this year, and a lot of these quarterbacks have just destroyed them. Justin Fields, Jordan Love, Caleb, and of course Russell Wilson when he was the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. It stands to reason that all this stuff, it shows you that you should be starting Bryce Young. Actual results may vary, but the process says this is a great start for Bryce Young.
And we see it with 4th down decisions. Regardless of the outcome, as long as the process is right, folks can feel good about that. Let's go to another young player, the rookie running back, Cam Skattebo. Higher or lower than 12.2, Mike?
I changed it to blue because Big Blue. We're going higher here on Cam Skattebo. I love me some Cam Skattebo. I loved him coming into the season. And now all of America and New York loves Cam Skattebo. It is impossible not to enjoy him while you watch him play. But in the last month, 16 fantasy points per game with at least 13 in every game. Last I checked, 13 is higher than 12.2. He is 4th in goal line carries in that span, which is big because the Eagles, they've allowed a touchdown to a running back in 3 straight weeks. And what I really love here is when the Giants have a lead, they feed Cam Skattebo the ball with carries. When they are trailing, he is heavily involved in the passing game and can rack up catches that way, which is huge in PPR. It gives him such a safe floor. I know it is a tough matchup on a short week for a rookie. I don't care. I'm playing Cam Skattebo. I'd play him over Henry and Kamara, who I had as sits last block.
All right, little context on the starts and sits there for Michael LaFleur. Let's go to our first veteran here in higher or lower. It's DeAndre Swift. Rank a couple weeks ago, you noted in the hot sauce, Kyle Monangai is a specter that could be changing things. Does that mean Swift is lower than 12.2 fantasy points?
It's really interesting. I'm going to go higher in this instance with DeAndre Swift, but I do want to establish a couple of things. We don't know who's going to get the early down work for the Chicago Bears. Ben Johnson was asked about it today and said it's very hard to evaluate the running back position for the Bears because every time there is a hole, a designed hole, there has been a defender in there, something that Ben Johnson is taking very personally. But one of the reasons why I really like DeAndre Swift this week is because he's been a good receiver out of the backfield. He's had at least 3 receptions in every game this year, 20-plus receiving yards in each of the last 2 games. The Commanders allow a lot of production to receiving backs out of the backfield. And last season, when the Bears were put into a position to win that game, One of the biggest reasons why was the efforts of DeAndre Swift. He kind of took that game over in the third quarter, got the Bears back into it, and when the Bears went ahead in the final minute of the game, a big reason why was because of Caleb, because of DeAndre Swift. I expect DeAndre Swift to have a big one in this one, although I will say again, if you have room on your bench to add Kyle Monangai and you can keep him there for a couple of weeks so we get more clarity on this running back situation, I would do that.
Yeah, once Ben Johnson gets clarity, then we'll all get some clarity about the Bears' running back position and how they approach things. Davante has a huge projection, 12.9 against a porous Ravens defense. Is it higher than that, Mike?
I think so. I was told blue looked pretty bad on this touchscreen, so I'm going to go with Rams gold here.
Okay.
But I think it is a good game for Davante, who in his past life was the best wide receiver in fantasy football. Now he just plays alongside that player. But 8 or more targets in 4 of his 5 games this year. And this is the big stat right here, right? He leads the NFL in red zone targets and is second in end zone targets. That is huge this week because the Ravens, they've allowed 10 red zone touchdowns to wide receivers. That is twice as many as any other team in the NFL. That is an average of 2 per week. So if Davante gets a touchdown, like I think, he's already halfway there to that number that we're looking at. So I think the catches and the yardage is enough to kind of push him over that. Plus, Baltimore is one of the best matchups. Running backs, wide receivers, it doesn't matter. They're so banged up that you just want to pick on that defense.
Yeah, the Ravens defense would love for it just to be 12.9 fantasy football points. Let's go to another veteran wide receiver, DK Metcalf, against the very good Browns defense, ranked higher or lower than 12.5 points.
I'm going to go lower here. It's very disappointing for me. I love DK Metcalf, but unfortunately, I can't have a big projection for him this week, especially when he's topped this total only once this season in 4 games. And obviously, the matchup is very difficult. When you go up against the Cleveland Browns, this is a team that plays really well right at the line of scrimmage. They've allowed the 10th fewest receiving yards per game to the position this season, but they're so good. They get on the quarterback. Now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to try to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible when facing this rush. And one of the things he's done is made quick passes to DK Metcalf. So there is an outside chance that DK can make up the deficit that he's going to have in receiving yards, in receptions. But for me, it's a very risky proposition. I really could see DK Metcalf having 8 receptions for about 40 yards, which would bring him under that 12. Like, sincerely. So for me, there could be volume there, but I just don't see the receiving production going against this tough Browns defense.
So not a lot of lowers this week, quite a few hires, a notable one here for DK Metcalf.